28th, 2021 working session to order. And if I could ask Vice Chair Hook, if you could read the announcements, please.
Yes, I can. Click. This meeting is being recorded by the recording clerk via Zoom. In the event that the connection is lost at any time during the meeting, a device is being used by the recording clerk for the purpose of taking minutes. Is there anyone else present who wishes to record the meeting?
I would like to.
Of course, Dick. While we are conducting town business using remote participation via Zoom, we ask that those of you not recognized by the chair or otherwise engaged in the discussion of the moment, please mute your microphone to avoid interruptions outside the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. We'll move to minutes. I believe we have a session today.
We do. I move that we approve the minutes of the Select Board work session held January 7th, 2021.
Second.
Second. Okay, is there any discussion?
Yeah, I just had a question about the minutes as to who read the announcements at the beginning. It says that you had read them, Marshall, but I think typically Lynn reads them at the beginning. I didn't know the answer to that, and I didn't have a recording of that part of the meeting. But it indicates that you read that governor's announcement. Was that the case?
I think I read the I think it was the same as we just did now, I think.
Okay,
yeah, I think so too.
Then we should change the minutes to reflect that. That would be an amendment then to the minutes.
Deb, did you get that? Okay, so just modify the motion.
I amend the minutes as indicated.
Is there a second on the amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote for the amendment. Mr. Jackson.
Aye.
Mr. Hook.
Aye.
Mr. Gant.
Aye.
Ms. Bermudez, aye. That's unanimous. So now a motion on the amended minutes. Probably overdoing it, but Mr. Jackson.
Aye.
Mr. Hook.
Aye.
Mr. Gant.
Aye.
And Ms. Bermudez, aye. So the amended minutes pass unanimously. Thank you.
Apologies for missing that.
No problem. All right, so the next item is the Essex County Trail Association, the letter of support. Kevin, do you want to give us any background, or this could be Heidi, either one?
I'm happy to.
Okay,
Heidi would like to, Kevin, but I was contacted by Carol Lloyd of ECTA, who does all the trail maintenance in town. They're applying for this Mass Trails grant, and it requires them to submit confirmation of community support, basically. So they're just seeking that letter for community support. They'll submit it with the, most of the trails, of course, a lot of the trails are on town-owned property. Trails on individual-owned property, they have to get property owner permission, but that comes down the road. And this is for planning of, this isn't for actual active trail work. This is for planning, mapping, identifying trouble spots, prioritizing. This is like a design and prioritization grant that they're seeking.
And Heidi, this is standard that a letter of support from the board usually accompanies these grant requests for the association?
Yes, this is fairly standard, and there's no money request from the town. This is just that, ECTA being a nonprofit entity is just letting the Mass Trails grant people know that the town supports the fact that they want to do trail improvements in town. So there's no money outlay or anything being requested from the town.
Okay, is there any discussion from the board before we make a motion?
Is there any downside to this, Heidi? Thank you.
There is none that I am aware of.
Thank you.
This is just clearly, please help us with our trails.
All right, can I have a motion?
My wife was on the board of Essex County Trails Association for a number of years, and they've done a map before. There has been a map around for a long time. So I think this is an update to the existing map that they're going to be.
This will actually be an internal, this is not to update the trail maps for the public. This is an internal design so that they can identify trouble spots and issues and maybe ongoing maintenance issues or areas that might need a boardwalk in the future that they're going to need to permit and raise money for. So this is like a design internal trail map they're working. And
Heidi,
the
can I
grant
just-
money allows them to do that.
Got it. Thanks, Heidi.
You mentioned this doesn't involve money. It does sound like the motion, though, is we're giving the letter of support for them to obtain funds.
Letter of support for them to apply for the grant. Any money would come. It's them. There's no outlay from the town being requested.
Right,
It would be a
right.
grant that the town would accept. This is a grant that would be issued to the Trails Association, right?
Directly to the
Sure.
Trails Association.
And
All right.
I was worried about the word issues in the motion, but that actually is what it's about. It's telling the state where our trails could use some help, and therefore that will go on to request further grants on the part of from the state to ECTA.
I'd move that we provide a letter of support to the Essex County Trail Association for their 2021 grant submittal to obtain funds to put townwide maps together indicating trail issues and for their chair or for the chair to sign.
I'm glad you did that. Thanks. Second.
Is there, okay. I think we've already had discussion. Roll call, Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Hook,
Aye.
Mr. Gant,
Aye.
Ms. Bermuda says aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Next item.
Just one more comment, Lynn, if I may.
Sure.
Heidi, that's got to be done. Didn't I read that grant closes like on February 1st or something?
Yes. That's why it's on tonight's meeting.
Okay. So
Yeah, they got it to us a little late.
I was going to say, you better work fast to get it to them.
Yep. They just contacted me. So
Yeah. Okay.
thank you guys.
You're welcome. Next item is a continuing discussion of the 2022 budget. So I'll hand it over to our town administrator.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies. I was a couple minutes late to the meeting. Vaccinations. As the chair said, we've had the opportunity each of the last 2 weeks to discuss the different operating budgets for the different departments. Today, we have the library, police, and fire. We have, I'd like to start it by hand it over to the library department to start with. Got Laura, our library director, and Kathy Hartman also I see is on the line from the board. So Laura, if you want to maybe just give a general overview and then kind of go through the list, and the board will probably have some questions for you along the way.
Okay, probably for the first time ever, the library budget decreased. There's a 1.6% decrease in the total budget. That's due. I'm sorry. That's due to a couple of things. Wendy Thatcher, the assistant director, retired this year, so we're hoping to hire a new assistant director who's going to make a lower salary. And we also had in the other category 2 items that were in the operating budget: makeup air unit repair and an engineering study that are both going to be completed this year and will not be carried over into the next operating budget. Did you want me to go line item by line item?
Did the board members have any specific questions on any of the changes?
Could you certainly go through the ones that are in red, the additional requests beyond requesting an
Okay.
additional, each of those, at least understand what those are?
Okay,
The water should be pretty obvious, but just go through.
right. Water, the anticipated maintenance and repair. There are contracts that the library has for the HVAC, for the fire panel monitoring, the elevator, the generator, septic inspection, the sprinkler inspections, the water treatment, fire extinguisher inspections, and the burglar alarm monitoring. So some basic increases in all those contracts. Account for the 1,000.
Laura, which item? I don't catch which items you're talking about. Sometimes you're going through it pretty fast. You know your budget well,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean I can follow it that fast. Which line item are you referring to?
We're talking about line item 61005 52400.
5400. Okay, anticipated maintenance and repair. Got it. Okay.
Right.
So all those contracts that you listed, Laura, that are going up by some percentage are all in that one line item.
Correct.
Okay.
The next line item was the unanticipated line item 61005 52500. Unanticipated maintenance and repair. That's actually coming down by $12,000. And that's the two items, the makeup air unit repair and the engineering study, that are going to be done this year that will not be carried over. The next item is 61005 53045. Library computer expenses. Those include software like Deep Freeze for the public computers, Trend Micro virus protection for the computers, the Wi-Fi maintenance, the cloud backup are included in that.
Again, contracts.
Yes. Network administration is a contract increase as well.
Okay, so the guideline was 0 for the increase, correct? And at
Yes.
the bottom you have a minus, but that's largely because of the 12,000. If we took out the 12,000 from both sides, so to speak, what would your increase be? Because if you added all of those requests in there, what would the increase be? That's kind of like the question at hand, right?
Looks to me like it's a decrease of $889.
Well, if you took the 12,000 out, it's increasing $2,285. Right? That's Dick. That's what you wanted.
2,000 out of that, so that's about a 1% increase out of 174,000.
It's 1.32% increase. Another.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, is that usual that the FinCom asks you to hold to a 0% increase on your contracts with vendors?
No, that was the general guideline for the other category, was to show a 0 increase.
Other being everything other than the wages?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so basically they're not expecting any contractual increases or that you go down and that you drop below what you had in all the other categories.
Some other category. That's right.
Yeah.
So you in theory would be asked to cut something from some other category to make up for contractual increases?
Yes.
It's spelled out on the above guidelines as a category for contracts, so that it stands out that way. But there's multiple reasons why people would increase contracts, so they do identify that as being above the guideline.
And so the obvious question is, I'm sure, Kathy, you've been through this. Was there anything else that you could decrease that would have brought you back down to the 0, or you're saying that it's so tight you need to be there?
Well, going along, it's like you're asking me to predict something that I don't know will happen. Some line items will not come to their full funding and others will go over. It's very hard to predict that we're going to have extra or that we won't have extra.
Laura, it looks like the contractual increases are about 8%, that your contracts have gone up 8% on average. Is that a usual increase? Is that on the larger side?
Well, on that particular line item is also included a inspection for the perimeter drains of 1,500.
Okay.
So the contracts haven't gone up 8%, but I needed that perimeter drain inspection. It was supposed to be done last year, and it was not done because of COVID. And I need to do that as part of library maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Laura? Looks pretty straightforward.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you,
You're
Laura.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay.
Thank you.
On to the fire department.
Yes, so Chief Collins Brown's here with us today to talk through the fire department budget. I know she spent a lot of time on that, as well as the conversation we've had around the ambulance services and the revenue conversation. But obviously today we're going to focus in on the specific line items. So Chief, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just before we talk about the budget, I just wanted to reiterate and circle back about, I'm not going to say the word right. I have to say it again. Herculean, right? Say that word. Can you say it? You know what I mean? Right? Herculean, like I can't say it. But anyway, the efforts yeah, thank you. The efforts that have been going on in the past year, and during a really unprecedented time, none of us had ever any experience in our lifetimes of this kind of magnitude of an incident, and it's been a whole year, and it's exhausting. I wanted to recognize the public safety, the personnel in our town, particularly on my department. Can you shut the door, please? That have put themselves in harm's way on a daily basis. They were not able to remote into work. They were not able to stage outside. They were directly in to the face of COVID, caring for hundreds of our residents who got sick, and for many of them who passed away, unfortunately. Our staff didn't need to come into work. The nature of their job as a call firefighter or a full-time firefighter on callback, they're not required to come here, but they did. They continue to come back. 4 of our firefighters did get COVID. They did get sick. None of them got COVID from their work in Topsfield, which I'm incredibly grateful that we were able to access the PPE that we did to help them. All 4 of them have recovered. They're back to work and doing well. So I wanted to recognize that the work of our police department, the absolutely incredible work of our health agent, our council on aging, to try to keep our seniors healthy. We have spent the last 2 days desperately trying to make sure we took care of everyone in phase 1, which it looks like we have. And now we've actually kind of jumped into starting to take care of the homebound. So we're really aggressively trying to make sure that people are taken care of. And that would never be possible without the teamwork that we've all experienced. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. It has been a heck of a year. So with that said, a couple of things just in general with our budget. It's not that exciting. I tried to kind of, you know where I'm at. I talked to you guys a lot about budgeting and grants and things like that. Over the last year, we applied for and received over $165,000 worth of grants for the fire department. Those grants were things for capital items such as radios. We were so lucky to be able to replace all of our portable radios, and for an extractor, which is a machine that cleans our gear to NFPA standards. Because as we know, PFAs are everywhere. They're in our firefighting gear. So we're exposed to carcinogens all the time. And by the nature of what we do, we're exposed to more carcinogens. So we're able to get a cleaner that follows National Fire Protection guidelines for cleaning. So we were able to do that. And then we were also able to get a lot of community safety items such as child safety seats, as well as training props for seniors and for children in kitchen safety and things like that. So we've been really successful in that. For the first 2 months of the fiscal year, one of my full-time staff, went to the town of Ipswich to be a full-time firefighter. We made a decision along with the town administrator to staff our department for the rest of the summer with call firefighters. So we didn't hire a full-time firefighter replacement until September, which we were able to have a cost savings to that, but also to help our members who were out of work during the summer. So there was a dual benefit to that. I don't know, I'm not sure what, a couple of things that hopefully we were so grateful, again, to the finance team and everybody who worked on the CARES money. We were really able to leverage that to help us in a lot of ways, and in structural ways. For this building, there was plumbing that wasn't up to code that we were able to repair for ventilation. And there was also, believe it or not, the HVAC system that was installed in 1969 was wired backwards. And that's, well, we don't have to talk about how many decades that is of cold air being sucked into this building. So through some of that, the work and the CARES monies, the efficiencies that we should see through that, I think, in saving heat and things like that should be really exciting for the future. But so that's just what I want to say before we talk about the budget specifically.
So Jen,
yes.
in a way, you're not sure then what the actual heating costs will be next year.
No, not at all. Yeah, so not at all.
Okay, good.
But they have to be.
But it'll be less. Whatever it is, it'll be less.
Have to be better. Yep, it was sucking in cold air all this time. If the heat downstairs wasn't on, the heat upstairs was backwards. And so the in the salaries and wages, most of them are contractual. Some of the reasons that the numbers are a little bit bigger, and Catherine, you can correct me if I say the wrong words, but we have a new collective bargaining agreement for both our call firefighters and our full-time firefighters. Those did result in significant increases in some people's pay. Some people were flat, but some people wasn't, to bring them up to more fair market value. And we haven't had any money added to our budget for at least one fiscal year, if not two. So there's some recognition of the contractual increases, and also the fact that there is the availability to now work 24 hours a day and not just a 12 hours a day. So that on like holiday pay, for instance, there's 12 hours of 24 hours of a holiday day rather than just 12. So those are all from contractual. One of the things I've been looking at with the help of Catherine is our wages for call firefighters. And I recommended putting them in the same line item for, it doesn't matter how they're used, their numbers of their pay is the same, whether they work a shift or they work, come up back on a call. And we track them, the fact that they're called back versus shift work, we track in other ways. We have other software here. So there wasn't really a need to keep those two line items separate. I did write Catherine and Kevin an email that in my, in version 2 of this document, I would add $10,000 to call firefighter wages, because we're still our increase in, we didn't get any money put into our budget, and our increase in call volume is continuing to increase about 15%, which is unusual compared to other communities. I think I probably talked about that last time. So I would add that to that. But other than that, I didn't know if anybody had any questions about the wages. And the only other thing was the training. There's $10,000 in training. In general, we've been really lucky, similar to it's kind of a change in the way things are, but oftentimes now the firefighters that come to us for a full-time job are already certified as firefighters. We have one person that isn't certified as a firefighter, a full-time firefighter. And so he'll need to go to the academy. The next option for him to go to the academy is in October. And so that will be the need to cover him for that academy. And it's exciting because the town of Topsfield has, believe it or not, never had a firefighter go to a full-time fire academy. They've always gone to the call volunteer fire academy, which is held on nights and weekends. I have 2 people in the academy now, and another person starting the academy in March, a new firefighter, call firefighter. And so that knowledge is imperative to teaching them how to use the equipment in a standardized way and how to follow directions. And the other advantage to it is there's many times during the academy where they see live fire. and I've always said that the first time you see live fire should not be the first time you see live fire. So it shouldn't be in the town of Topsfield where you're expected to perform and save someone's life. It should be in a training situation which is controlled. So, so that's in there for that. Whether that, I think, we're in the beginning of, we've changed our staffing model each year for the last 3 years. So we're kind of in a holding pattern. So we'll see where these items go. And we'll see if the call volume continues to increase. But those are the kind of the outliers there.
So Chief, just a question on the wage call firefighters. It went up to 69%, and it says combining accounts. When you combine that line item with the old line item, is that net zero, or what is that going up by?
From looking at this right now, I'd have to look it on the computer, but also that's the thing that we're looking at in my note to Kevin and to Catherine to increase that by another 10,000. So, because that's definitely, we're relying heavily on call firefighters now for shift fill and things like that. And so whether overtime actually ends up may be able to come down at some point, that may be the end result of that.
So, Madam Chair, yes, it is a 0% increase. It was just moving the 102 up into that other category to combine the two. The 10,000 that the chief referenced would be an above ask beyond that to increase it. There's a little bit of a guess with called firefighters. It's not like the full-time guys where we know how many shifts they're going to take, what the increase in their rate would be. The called firefighters, we put out the call. You might have a couple. You might have more than a couple. You might, depending on the situation, how many calls we have. There's a lot of variables to that. But the overall, as we all know, in the contract with the reserves, it basically brought people who were making less than lifeguards at Hood Pond up to a more market comparable rate. At the same time, for people who've been here for a longer period of time, their increases were 0.25% in some cases, as we know. So the 10,000 that Chief's referencing, that would be for increased call volume and the adjustments of what we could see regarding related to the contracted dollar amounts at the end of the day. And it all depends.
The 10,000 that I see in red is for training. What we're saying is that there's a version 2 coming out of your budget that will have another red on that line item that is equal to now 249,000 some odd. That's where there'll be another 10,000, correct?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. And I appreciate Kevin and Catherine both tried to talk me out of that when I did the first budget, and I really was kind of cavalier. But in all fairness, it's going to be more expensive. So
another cut. I'd like to take another cut at what Lynn had asked and the way you answered it, Kevin. So we're obviously combining those two things together, but it was previously called fire wage station coverage call firefighters. That's 102,000. Essentially what we're saying is because we're running a 24/7 operation, we don't have this same station coverage needed, but it essentially inures to the fact that we have call firefighters there all the time, so that means more. So the reason that line item, meaning 51,152, is going away is because we're not doing that anymore, but in order to get the 24/7, we have to put it up in line item 51,150. Is that a way of saying the same thing, or am I wrong?
It was more so that nobody could explain to me why they were separate except for documenting. And we have other ways, other software here to document. So it was just a matter of tightening up the sheet. There's no reason to separate out. The hourly rate is exactly the same. There's no difference in what they're doing. And so that was the only reason. It was in my opinion, it was a housekeeping item to make it. There's no reason to have them separate.
Well, it looks to me like it's housekeeping because the amount of money hasn't changed yet.
Right.
And for clarity on the version 2, so it's unusual. Version 1 would go out typically after the version 1. If anything, you see a reduction in some of those maybe over requests. In this case, for the purpose of reviewing the budget, though it's not included in the budget currently, you could assume there's a $10,000 number there that's in addition to. At the end of the day, when the select board, hopefully by the end of this evening, we review and have any final changes, that can be part of that discussion if it's something you would like to eliminate or not. But again, it's based on trying to have an approach there. And again, it's a little bit of a guessing game because we don't know who's going to respond, if it's going to be the lower end wage person or higher end. But we have some actuals. We do have an increase. There's a lot of moving targets, so it's not an exact science. But the reason for that is to make sure we have enough to cover it over the course of the year.
So another way of looking at it from a gross number, and maybe Catherine can help my quick numbering here. But if we take the red that's shown now and being requested plus the additional 10,000 on 51,150, it would come up to $38,000, meaning that essentially what we're asking for in additional wages instead of 1.5% would be $48,000, or let's see, that's closer to 10. That would be closer to about 7%. In that category, we're asking for wage increases of about 7% in the fire. You're on mute, yeah. Catherine, thank you.
Yeah, adding the 10,000, it's 6.74, 49,000, just under 500, 49.5.
Okay. About 7%. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
That's a big increase. All right. Okay.
But also, I mean, I haven't been given any.
Yeah,
their rates have gone up, but I haven't been given any extra money.
Yeah.
So it's so.
We also,
Yeah, so-
I think, are seeing a significant increase in the revenue that the same group of people are bringing into the town. I think what did you say, Jen, that it went from like 150 to, you're anticipating 350 to 400?
Yeah. Yep.
Thousand?
Yep.
There was also a number that went into the salary reserve line item. And at the end of the year, when everything was said and done, it wasn't needed to be moved into the line. So that didn't happen because of freezes, just changing in staff. So it's really not a fair comparison to take last year's budget at this point and compare it to this year's budget at that 7% without taking into those calculations as well if we had done those transfers.
If we had done them, Catherine, what percentage would that 7 drop to?
I don't have that, but I could figure that out by figuring out what the amount would. I would basically take all the items that are union related, and increase them by perhaps 2%, the change that was in the union, and give you that dollar figure. I could figure that out, but I would have that for your next meeting.
Why was it, Catherine, that it wasn't moved over?
It wasn't necessary because at the end of the year, the accounts were not running low because of salary freezes, hiring freezes, and then just changes with everything going on with the COVID, people schedules changing and stuff. There was just a big shift in everything that was going on initially. Okay. And you'll see the same theme happening in the police department. So I will plan to figure out those calculations for both the fire and the police so that you'll have, a better comparison of apples to apples.
Yeah, looking at it this way, it's almost like we're punishing Chief for coming in under budget last year, that we didn't need to move the reserves.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, any other questions on the salary portion for Chief?
Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to go through the other sections, Chief? Or?
Yeah, I didn't really change anything. I moved some vehicle maintenance to professional services, and that's all I really did. Otherwise, it's 0. I didn't increase that area at all. So
it looks like maintenance went down. Did you move?
I took the 2,500 from the maintenance and put it in professional services because the ambulance billing is about $1,000 a month that we pay the billing company. And so that's also included in that, like I said, the costs of the ambulance service are about 12% of the revenue, and that's in that 12%. And so I think that I think that's appropriate with my ability to utilize the town mechanic, that I'll be able to see some savings in that. So I think that's a doable. I mean, the other stuff is, we're going to have to continue to conserve electricity, water, do the things that we've been trying to do, and kind of monitor the systems of the building.
Out of curiosity, have you had the opportunity to utilize the town mechanic yet?
Oh yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, tremendously great. There's a couple of things. One thing that we did, the police department, the park and cemetery department. See, I got that right. And the highway department and the fire department joined together, and we purchased a reader, so that now if we get a check engine light, we're able to bring the trucks to the town mechanic. So now we don't have to go to, for me, I have to go to North Attleboro for a fire truck mechanic, or Hopkinton. So it's such for me, and just the overtime and things like that, it's a tremendous savings. So it's such a worthwhile effort to share in purchasing that equipment. And so he has the expertise to tell us what's wrong with the truck. And then for me, so far, I've been fortunate enough to have him be able to fix things. He's obviously not certified to fix the bigger things on the fire trucks and some of the systems on it, but for some of the smaller trucks and ambulances, he's great, really a great resource.
I just have this vision of like a police car, a fire truck, a dump truck just lined up at the garage coming down the hill from there.
Yeah, that's very possible.
What our vaccination looked like at the Topsfield Fair a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd also mention too the turnout gear. I think this is something to point out. With I don't know if you want to cover it, but we've talked about this during the capital process that every year there's a $10,000 capital item for turnout gear. Chief's able to purchase 3 sets with that amount of money. It's really not, in my opinion, capital items, and it's an ongoing regular occurrence. So there's a request for $10,000 to be built into the ongoing operating budget for the fire department to allow them to have the equipment they need.
So it would have been an ask in the capital budget, and instead we're moving it over here to the operating.
Yep, exactly.
My opinion, that's where it should be.
Okay, any other questions for Chief on this budget?
Let me just ask though, on the radio repeaters, we haven't had expenses on that in the past, so you don't. That's essentially a dead item. You've taken care of that capital. The last item on the thing there, we're in good shape on all the radios.
We're in process. Is that safe to say, Chief Hovey? There's some.
That is safe to say.
There's some movement with Essex County Fire Chiefs Association, with NERAC and stuff like that, to leverage other resources to help us with our communication. So that's something that actually, because Chief Hovey, because we're involved with the Regional Communication Center, we're actually really fortunate to have that asset and the weight of that in getting some, trying to improve our communications through other funding methods. So. Yeah, it's like the fire car allowance. I don't know. There's no fire car allowance. So there's some items that are just left over from old.
So we have needs still, but the needs you expect to be handled through grants or other things through the RECC or something of that nature.
We're trying very hard to
Thank you.
Do that.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your work on this.
It's a lot of juggling, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Kevin, our police chief is next.
Yeah, I'll just really quickly, I'll open it. Spent a lot of time. This is Chief's first time going through the operating budget as chief. And one thing, when we went back in March and April, when we were going through the process of bringing Chief on board as such, one of the things Chief committed to me would be a bottom-up budget, looking at it from a line item by line item, see what the costs are, adding lines, taking them out as needed. And subsequently, Chief working with Catherine Gabriel and Catherine in his department. They did an absolute fantastic job of really digging deep into the budget. And I think you'll see that as Chief walks you through the work that was done and the numbers that are represented here in his budget. So I know Chief will talk about this, but we've talked about the cruiser in the budget, out of the budget, capital, operating. Part of the whole conversation we've had to date. We don't have to necessarily spend too much time on it, but something I just want to make sure everyone's just reminded of, that was one of the open items that we talked about as we go through the FinCom process, identifying where that should live in perpetuity, or at least for the foreseeable future. So, Chief, I'll hand it over to you to walk the team through it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Town Administrator and Madam Chair. Well, it's been what a year. So I was sworn in on April 30th. May 1st, we had a hiring freeze and a spending freeze. So I was down 2 offices immediately. We've had on April 5th, we had an officer go out injured that is still out injured. And we've had the ups and downs with the COVID-19 officers in. But we have been able to sustain everything and provide a phenomenal service. But I do have to echo all the words the fire chief said. We have an absolute phenomenal team in Topsfield that really makes, I'm so proud to come to work every day, to work with the fire chief and the health agent and the town administrator and all members of the select board and the other members of the team within town hall, the highway superintendent and so forth. It's an honor to be offered this job and to be part of this team, and I take it extremely serious at everything that I take a look at. Spend countless hours here, and it's all well worth it. So this budget is a maze in one sense. You have to understand that I'm really excited to be able to sit before you today and bring this budget forward. I can't thank Catherine Gabriel, Catherine Jackson, and Kevin for all the time they spent with me designing this budget and vetting the numbers. So this is a true and accurate budget that I am proud to bring forward. This budget process was extremely time consuming. It was tedious. It was extremely comprehensive, as we legitimately started with a zero-based budget. The executive assistant and we examined the actual receipts and the expenditures and line items of every single cost for the last 3 years. We want to see, we examine each expense. Was it categorized correctly, and was it necessary? And we consolidated and eliminated unnecessary categories to reflect of actually how we operate here at the police department. We calculated the salaries and wages utilizing actual numbers, and we have had all those numbers vetted by the town accountant and cross-referenced by the contractual obligations between the town, the full-time contract, and the part-time Reserve Officers Association contract. This budget reflects a reduction, an overall reduction of approximately $5,000 as compared to the appropriated FY21 budget, while still providing the officers, the full-time officers, with a 1% increase in wages and a 0.5% one-time stipend wage increase for accreditation. And that went all out to the full-time officers. This budget also does not require a cash reserve transfer fund that was requested last year. We are not asking for that. And I believe that total is around $68,000. I'm also pleased that we are able to receive nearly $80,000 in grants and $16,500 in donations. These grants and awards truly assist us in the line item budget and reducing our expenses by allowing us to purchase new modern equipment, increase our traffic initiatives, and purchase necessary safety equipment for the officers. This year, we are projecting to generate approximately $34,000 to go into the general fund. Those funds, as you'll see, shaded in the wages, are made up of around $17,000 for our agreement with the Masconomic School District, for the school resource officer. We also charge $25 for towing. It generates around $3,000 per year. We plan to have a really aggressive truck team enforcement this year that potentially could generate nearly $10,000. And our firearms licensing, which we're mandated by law to have, generates about $4,000. So with the additional grants that we worked so hard on, and over the last 8 months, we've been able to secure that close to $100,000 between donations and grants, has really allowed us to put this comprehensive budget together and have all of our operating lines be balanced, and also to be able to have all of our wages and salaries with the adjustments, and those increases of approximately $12,000 of wage increases to only have our overall budget be decreased by about $5,000. So I know it's a complicated, probably mess, probably difficult to read. I'm sure you have numerous questions why there's so many pluses and minuses. But I built this budget with the team from the bottom up. I used actual numbers. I looked at every single line item. All the numbers have been vetted, and this is how the budget came out. I was surprised myself to show that we came in at a negative number, but I am extremely comfortable and excited about this budget. There are some, adjustments I'm sure that you want to understand better. An example of the wages of why you can go up $12,000 and still be showing negative numbers is purely the fact that if we move forward and hire 2 full-time officers, they're going to be only getting paid at 90% for the probationary period. So that reduces that wage item by close to $13,000. So we increased our sergeant, which increased at $10,000. We have 1 less day in this fiscal year, which reduces it by a couple $1,000s. So overall, our wages are less than they were last year. So I could go through every single line. I do not want to bore you at all. I'm here to answer all your questions that you may have regarding this. We had on the line item budget, we had 33 line items. We have reduced that to 25 with eliminating some lines, consolidating some lines. So when we go forward, it's an actual reflection of how costs should be appropriated and what category they should be in. I am not going to talk negatively about the prior administration. This is my budget. I will be held responsible for it, and I'm extremely honored and excited to talk to you about this today.
Chief, 2 quick questions. One is, what is a wage matron and keeper?
So the matron is a prisoner watch person, attendant.
Okay.
So every time we have a detainee here, we need to have a person that monitors the cell. By law, they do a 15-minute check of that person. They visibly have to look at the person, make sure they're breathing, make sure they're not in need of any services. We have a electronic system that they have to walk the length of the cell block. It's not too long. It's only 3 cells, but and then they have to, with a key code, plug in the number, and it documents it on an electronic system that we have to, when we get inspected by the state, we have to prove that every single detainee was checked every 15 minutes. We actually go above and beyond. The state requires 30 minutes. We do it every 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't familiar with that terminology. So,
yeah, so it's a matron. May seem sexist because it could be male, female. I'd rather have it as a prisoner watch attendant. I think
that's great. Okay, thank you. And one other quick question: is there any reason or emphasis why some numbers in the proposed fiscal year 22 column are in red? I can't seem to find a pattern. Some go up, some go down. So I wasn't sure why some are in red.
So if you're going right down and then you look at the wage clerical, that's going to be a negative number of 14,000. I'm not sure what's in red and what is not. I don't have that version of it.
Which
Okay.
line items are you saying? Go ahead.
So if you just go down from the top down and you look at the wage clerical, and it's a negative 14,000.
Yep.
That is that I made a decision that our clerk of records resigned, and I consolidated that position to my administrative assistant and the sergeant's responsibilities. So I have no intention of filling that position. So that's a reduction of 14,000 there.
So Dick,
I
I was looking
about the next column where some of those numbers are red and some are not.
Yes, like 59,440 is in red. That's a 2% increase. You go down a little bit further, 67,124 below it is a larger increase, but it's in black. So I just didn't know if there was some emphasis or some reason why some of them were highlighted in red.
I'd have to defer to Catherine.
Yeah, it was actually discussion points in terms of identifying the items that were purely contractual, but there are other items, but it was just something that during the process that they stayed in red. I can fix
Okay.
that.
No problem. I just didn't know if it was something that we should focus on. Okay.
But the worth noting on that line, a particular line item for Catherine Jackson, the admin assistant, that 1,197 is the 2% increase for the non-union personnel, and then the additional 6,668 represents the switching of the hours. So we had 14 hours or 12 hours administrative assistance that's going away. As Chief indicated, was split between the sergeant and some additional responsibilities given to Catherine Jackson. That's 4 hours, Chief.
Yeah, so I put in for the above and beyond, I put in for 4 additional hours to bring her up from 36 to 40 hours. And that is sort of paid for by the reduction of the 14,000 for the clerical position for a savings of $8,055. So by consolidating that. So right now, Catherine Jackson is doing all of the work or a majority of the work of the clerical person in her 36 hours, and on numerous occasions she's staying beyond the 36 hours and not being compensated for that. So I am asking for an above and beyond of $68 to increase her hours to 40 hours.
Well, it's obvious, Chief, here, the amount of time and attention that you have given to this budget, and the net result, considering all the contractual obligations, is that you're going down, which is terrific.
Thank you.
Just a comment, if I may. We tend to beat people to death when they increase their budget. And I see a whole bunch of reductions. And that comes about from your baseline budget building, I'm sure. There's a whole bunch of things that are going to go away, and I want to make sure that you think you're very proud of the fact that this is your budget. I just want to make sure that you can live with those numbers, because there's a lot of reductions and some line items that are going away. I notice that you're not even going to pay for meals for the prisoners.
That was a number that was thrown in there that I really never understood. We don't feed that many prisoners.
I would imagine.
And so, a length of period of time now, it has increased because, as I explained, that how the safe keeps, which is watching a detainee before they're arraigned, the Essex County Jail is not taking those. So we are housing people longer, and we have had incurred about, I went back actually for the last 5 months of actual expenses, and that's how I came up with, the amount of money that we have spent on prisoner meals, and then in 5 months, and then calculated that out for a whole year.
Well, it looks like you've done a nice job, and I commend you for it. The amount of time that it took you to do that, you and Catherine both, I'm sure, and in fact, two Catherines.
Yes,
I'm
both
sure spent
Catherines.
an incredible amount of time on that stuff. If it all works out this way, it's a job well done, in my opinion.
I mean, I feel very comfortable with it. We did reduce our training, and we're providing more training because I'm doing more training online. And so we're able to reduce it, $10,000, $12,000. So again, we're providing more training to our offices, but we're doing it online when they're on duty. Again, we had to get very creative in everything we're doing. We can't have in-person classes anymore. How are we able to maintain all of the mandatory requirements for the training of the officers, how to keep them up to date with the legal updates? So I had to look at alternative ways to do this. And it proved out that it actually really works, and it actually assisted us in reducing our budget.
Really interesting. Oh, go ahead, Boyd.
Making the decision to go with the zero-based budget is pretty creative, in my opinion. And I can understand you wanting to do that too, because this is the first time it's your budget.
Chief, I think the really interesting part of your budget comes next. I've never seen so many so many decreases in each line item. That's impressive.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. As I said, we took 3 years of receipts, and I'll just use the electricity. We have never spent more than $8,300 in electricity ever, and it's was always been budgeted for $13,500, and we've never spent more than $8,300. So when I went back, I just didn't understand why it would be just a constant number when we've never done that for 3 years. I did take the number and I did elevate it I took the 3-year averages. I gave myself a buffer. I elevated by 10% because of if electricity does go up the national grid, and I'm at 91.30, and we did this with every single line item. And we found, you go down probably 6 more and you see police maintenance, heating, gas tanks, $2,000. There isn't one person at this police department that knew what that meant, but there was always $2,000 in there. So it was almost like a account that we used as a slush fund and paid other things out of it to have everything balance out, so we didn't have to ask for a reserve transfer. So I moved that into building maintenance because the building is deteriorating, and it was built in the mid 1930s, and so I moved that into something that I thought was appropriate. And so I eliminated that line item, took the $2,000, put it into the building maintenance that I think is necessary. So that number went up, but it was offset by a category that we, used inappropriately in the past by my discovery.
Slush fund is never a word or a phrase you want to hear when talking about budgets.
I see your maintenance.
Nice job on coming in with a zero. That's appreciated. Could I
Great job.
Could I ask
Go ahead, Dick.
for example, one item though? There's a line item. This would be 53,450 advertising. Based on experience, we don't spend much in advertising from the past. I look at some of the past years, and you added a 1,150. I don't have a problem with it because the bottom line comes out to zero, but that like almost sticks out because it's been zero, and all of a sudden it goes up to 1,000.
Well, that was contributed to a consolidation. And we took things from, we now are calling that, and it doesn't reflect on here, as police resource materials. So we had to go out and purchase labor posters. We had to go out and purchase legal updated manuals. So we recategorize advertising as resources.
Catherine?
Good idea.
We'll have to figure out how to do this. We're going to have to either change that name or create a new one. Okay. I think it's important to do, though, because it didn't look like it. I understand what you did. But again, coming in at zero. That's where we want to be, unless we had something, for example, that library had, which was a one-time thing that they pulled out, and they were actually less than zero, but not really less than zero when you looked at the whole thing. But could I go back up to the wages? Again, it's great that the wages are not up. One thing you kept using was the word $5,000 decrease. The budget that I'm looking at on, I guess it's line 333. The total is $9,749. What was that 5,000 that you referred to?
So the wages, when you look at the top part of it for the police department, you have an increase of $4,850, and that's a contractual 2% increase for the chief and for the captain. And then when you go down, you have a decrease of wages of $9,749 for a total police department salary and wages of a negative $4,890.
Okay, because you included. Okay, I was just looking at the wage part of it, and you were talking about everything, including.
I'm talking about everything. Everything in the top category.
I understand what you're talking about. Then.
First time doing this.
I'm almost, because we want to have consistencies in how we do things. The objective is to come within guidelines. I don't know that you, and Catherine maybe would provide some feedback in here, but this line item where we added 4 hours of time, and you took it out of, it actually happens to be the next line item, it would seem like that is not an extra, but rather the adjustment such that, okay, you didn't decrease the salaries by 0.70, you decreased them by 0.60 or something by the time you put something like that in that. The problem being that the approved budget going forward does not, I assume that 6,000 is in the other tab. Is that right?
It's in the above guidelines.
In the above guidelines, okay.
Yeah, and there's a note on the above
really
guidelines.
Above guidelines, if you essentially just readjusted the labor mix, I think it's unfair to call it above guidelines.
Well, yeah, there's a note on that says all requests that represent a change in payroll or staffing structure of a department are automatically included on this list for consideration. So sometimes if there's a change in staffing structure, it involves insurance, for example, that needs to be taken into consideration. So it's just part of the rules that we follow, that it goes on to, it gets vetted this way and brought to attention.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask this, Chief? Could I ask this? Just rather than trying to look at individual line items, which are not, give us an overall sense of why you were able to decrease the labor cost in the budget this year. For example, there was an attempt to reduce the labor costs by reducing overtime at one point to adjust that. Whatever the case may be, just a general overall, why can we pay more for the officers and provide the same services but cost less, which I love, and all of us do. But could you just conceptually, how did you pull it off without detailed line items?
So
is it the probation officers?
Yeah. So when you're looking at just the wages, the police wages, and last year was $795,400, and this year I'm proposing $800,877. That when I did the budget and used actual numbers of the offices that were vetted by Catherine Gabriel, and we looked at the two additional hires, the two officers, they're going to, for the FY22 budget, they're only going to be paid at 90%. So if we pay the officers at 90%, that is a $12,000 less than a regular wages for an officer. So even though we're having more officers, we're paying them less. So therefore, you're going to have less of a budget. We also, one of our sergeants was promoted, but he was a master patrolman that was getting paid 2% of his pay, and we promoted him to sergeant. So when he got promoted, he only had an increase of 14%. So he replaced me. So I was at 16%. He came in at 14%. So that had another savings of $1,300. So you take the 90% plus the sergeant's adjustments, and then you add in the increase of what the officers got for their 1.5%. Then you decrease all my minuses, and I came out with the magical number of $800,877.
Excellent. The point in part being, though, that we can't expect that same thing to happen next year unless we wind up hiring 2 new officers because somebody leaves or something like that. It's not necessarily repeatable, but that's excellent. It's excellent. Thank you.
No, I mean, next year you have to, recognize that those officers on FY23 are going to go up.
Sure.
The 10%.
Their regular increase in salary plus going from 90 to 100. That's the point that I'm making. Just to understand it. Understanding it means that, okay, we'll get hit a little bit more next year, but this is the way to be. Thank you.
Yes.
Even if we included, if we didn't have the 90% salary for the 2 officers, if it went up to 100%, chief still came in at 1/3 of 1% as far as an increase. So it's fabulous.
Right on.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments for chief?
Comment
Excellent
as far as I'm
job.
concerned, a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, sir.
Just fabulous. All right.
Nice
Thank you
write-up,
so
too,
much.
by the way, that put things together. It's a long write-up, but it puts a lot of stuff together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on then to the town warrant, continuing our review and discussion. One thing
We lost you, Lynn.
Lynn has frozen. Either that or she's doing a great job of appearing still and quiet.
When she does come back, there's one thing I was hoping we could do before we move on off the budget, is to just get us an idea. We do need to move for next week the version 2 per the calendar to the omnibus to FinCom and recirculate to you folks, and just see if there's anything that needs any further discussion or anything we need to do differently coming out of this version. But we obviously can wait till Madam Chair's back on the call.
Well, were you going to come? You were going to hopefully come back with some additional information for some of these, right? Today?
On the budget?
No, on the warrant.
Yes. Yes. In when we get to the next agenda item, yes, we were going to go through the remaining of the items, and I do have some updates.
Kevin, back to your comment about the fact that version 2 of the omnibus budget versus version 1. We can continue to beat all that to death. I'm confident in your ability and Catherine's guidance and your department heads' relationships to move forward with version 2.
But we need to be also somewhat realistic. I went to the part of the FinCom meeting on Tuesday, and so you were there also, Kevin. Somewhat of a surprise to me, I found that Masconomet, because of our change in enrollment for us, is a huge increase this year. It's 5.4%. We've got to make that up someplace, so to speak. And so I can believe we're going to have additional pressure on our budgets.
Absolutely. I think that after today and next week, once we distribute version 2, when we go through the budget.
I just got a text back from Lynn. It says, sorry, my computer won't even turn off. Can Marshall continue for me? And so we're okay. So we know that Lynn is working on it.
Okay.
And
so just from that concern, it's similar to what we did last year. My experience was, as we move further down the process, we have officially the budget submitted. We have time to go through it. We understand what our using Mike's model and working with Catherine on that as well. We'll understand sort of where that number is and where it lands. And last year, for instance, I know Masco came back and actually hit guidelines before we were trying to get those numbers down. Same thing with ourselves and the schools, Proctor and Stewart, the Tri-Town. We were able to get the last 160 over the finish line. So a lot of what we see here, as we all know, won't be the final budget. Once we get a better understand the model and some cuts, there'll certainly be more adjustments to come.
So is your question, Kevin, basically whether or not we have any more questions on the budget parts that we've already reviewed?
Yeah, is there anything that I want to make sure when we move this, we're all on the same page, we understand it, and at a certain level we're comfortable. Obviously, we know, like I said, there'll be some additional changes through the process. That's normal. But if there's anything that was, I know we found a couple tweaks in the first couple of meetings we had over the last couple of weeks. Just some small clerical things we need to adjust. But I just want to make sure before we move this forward to the next level, there isn't anything that the board wants to take up for further discussion or that's a glaring issue or anything like that.
I don't have anything left over from what we've already discussed.
I agree.
I'm sorry, I was in and out here. The question is the omnibus budget as presented. Is that the?
Yes, basically, Dick, all of the things that we've already discussed and reviewed with department heads. Do you have any lingering questions or concerns with that? That's the question.
I don't.
So the question is, Dick, do you?
Well, the question is in part the other. We did not necessarily go through every bit of the others either. And I'm not sure that we have agreed, so to speak, to go forward with this other item or that other item, whatever it happens to be. Let me give you one, for example, in the other that we're going to forward to if we forwarded this version of the budget. Just as an example, one of the items is $14,000 for a cruiser. That's assuming a lease. I don't know that we're going to be doing that because we have $57,000 for a purchase. So I'm not going to call this thing clean going forward with that as an example. But there's other ones in there that we have not either agreed to or disagreed with, but that we have discussed. I'm not sure that we discussed everyone either. For example, that 14,000, I don't think we discussed it as an item in that other.
I agree. I agree. I had forgotten about that. We never really did make the decision of whether we wanted to lease that vehicle or buy it. Kevin, do you think you could put it together, or you working with Dick could put together a list of those things that might be still a question rather than going, I don't know.
At some point, we need to go through the others to see where we stand on them, I think.
And so for example, on the police cruiser, absolutely, Mr. Gant, it double accounted for in the current version, with both the capital as well as this omnibus. And that's something, it is purposeful only because for discussion purposes at the next phase, we were going to have with the FinCom to get their impression as well of the two options. I know when we discussed it, we talked about the lease, we talked about the purchase, we talked about free cash, we talked about raise and appropriate, and we had a good sense that there wasn't a glaring advantageous option for us. There was sort of based on the economy, based on this operating budget. Do we want to hunker down and do a $14,000 cost today and spread the rest of the cost over 4 years? Or did we want to continue on in the way we always have, which is to purchase through free cash? And so I've actually, in the previous FinCom meetings, I've sort of primed that conversation with the FinCom that will be something that we'll discuss. So we could present it differently. We could certainly take if the select board wants to go with representing it through the capital budget as it already exists, and remove it out of the 14,000 out of the above guidelines, we could still have that conversation at the next level, and find $14,000 in savings in where we are right now. And that's certainly something we could do if it's to your point, Mr. Gant, it absolutely is not a finished product. Multiple versions to come, but for right now, we could tighten that up if you'd like.
Right.
Sorry, everyone. I don't know what happened there or where I last left off. I was talking, no one was reacting, and I thought, boy, I'm not getting any response. And I realized it was me who had frozen.
You voted through a massive number of changes while you were gone.
All right, that's good. We can wrap up early then.
Yeah, the name of the town is actually now New Topsfield. So,
Well, I think the issue before us right at the moment is that Dick is requesting that we go back through the other line items of all the budgets to make sure that we all agree that we've covered that stuff adequately.
Oh, that's a big ask right now. I mean, do you want to take a look offline, Dick? Do you have any specific questions that we didn't cover? Because I think everybody's come through already, right?
I think we've discussed at least most of them.
Yeah.
The issue in part was, are we totally comfortable with all of what's here in this version of the budget and that we've talked about, which includes other, to be acceptable to the board meeting going forward to the FinCom? And I said, I'm not sure that the board agrees with, we understand, hopefully, the items that are there, but I'm not sure that we agree with all of the things that are being requested.
Are there particular ones that you have identified that you think you'd like to discuss?
I have not put those down as ones to discuss. However, I do think the ones that add additional hours, for example, to jobs is something that we need to look at, especially considering the pressure that we have apparently coming in on the budget based on what I mentioned was the Masconomet numbers. Now, maybe they'll fix their numbers some, but I'm not sure they're going to fix it by a whole lot more.
One thought, Kevin, were you going to be discussing the possible work session for next Thursday today?
So when you froze, Madam Chair, one of the things I brought up before we transitioned to the warrant was next week per the schedule. I think Thursday we're going to be setting up version 2. That's our goal right now, to stay on that schedule. And the question I posed, and I think you fill in the blanks from what we just discussed, was to basically, are we at a comfort level with how it stands now, or is there anything in particular that we want to discuss further and discuss if we should pull back on that? And so I know Mr. Gant, you gave some thoughts, Mr. Hook did, as well as Mr. Jackson. So we can, from a timeline, we could certainly, I think we have the work session. Let me look at the schedule real quick while I have everybody.
I'm sorry, while we were talking here, I just was scanning down through the other. It reminded me of at least one that should be looked at. And that is in the town hall. We increased the electricity from 20,000 to 40,000. I think that's a mistake. And I did try to call Donna, and she was on vacation. And I said, I'm not talking with you about this while you're on vacation, but I haven't called her back since. I can summarize where I think it is, Kevin, but I think you want to look at it, as I said. The run rate has been about 26,000. We have enough time on the new building, almost 2 years of worth of time, especially where we're talking about heating with the electric. So I think that 26,000 is a good base. On top of that, if I took the estimate that we had for the charging stations as to 10 hours a day of charging to give us a break even thereabouts, it came out to something less than $5,000 worth of power. So if we moved it to $31,000, I would feel more comfortable. $40,000, I think, is way over on that electric. That's just one item, though, that I noted. So I'd like to take a good hard look at that.
I certainly had a sticker shock myself when we sat down and discussed it. And I'll be frank, first conversations, we were looking at a bigger number only because some of the actuals to date, looking at the historicals, combination, I think, of a 6% rate increase is what we calculated. We looked at historical invoices over the last year, coupled with the footprint expansion and area that we have to heat. The numbers, I think, through 6 months were 19,000 of actuals roughly. So if you annualize that out, we're looking at, if you assume it's going to be close to the same, we're looking at close to that 40. So that's sort of the number. That's how we got to that number. We did make a.
I'll spend some time with you if you want, but I
Sure.
don't follow your numbers based on what I see as history. But this is probably not the time to do the detail. I'll talk with you.
Okay, that sounds fine. One note I will make is conscious effort on some of the line items. Same way Chief on some of his items. We took some real look at a couple of them. We tried to reduce where we could to try to compensate for some of those increased costs on the electricity. But it certainly doesn't. It's not a one-for-one. There is an additional cost clearly out of the town hall electricity. And one of the things we also talked about was going forward. When I saw those actuals, I said, my goodness, there's got to be a way we can bring those numbers down, even if it is doubling our footprint in the building. And there's got to be
Kevin, we have 2 years worth of footprint in the building. We have not increased the footprint since we moved in.
Correct, but last year. I know. I'm just talking with the team.
Why don't we talk about it offline? It'll be easier for you.
Well, could I ask? I'm actually not prepared to identify those particular items where I'm maybe a little uncomfortable at this point. I don't know if everybody has gone through that, so I'm wondering if it would be worth for us to take a look offline. And I think, I don't know if you raised it again. I apologize for my computer going down, but did you talk about the potential work session next Thursday, Kevin? Because I thought maybe that could be an opportunity for us to go through, and we could send to you ahead of time the areas that we might have a concern, and then we could discuss them at that point, where we have the complete list. Does that make sense?
So, I mean, it'll just our timeline. So Thursday is our due date to get this out. And I need to make sure Catherine and I have enough time to take any edits that are received, make the changes on the omnibus, make sure everything's checked, double checked and triple checked before we distribute. So, I mean, it's as long as, the calendar can always move if that's something that the team wants to do. We won't be able to make those changes in one night. That's my point. So it would certainly push the distribution of V2 out till the next week, probably.
Does that pose a problem for the FinCom or for you to push that out just a couple of days?
Catherine, I want to make sure I'm not speaking over. You obviously you'll be taking any changes in making it changes. Do you have any thoughts on that? Pushing.
Yeah, I'm not, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Having trouble with my computer. Yeah, I don't know if this is a problem with the FinCom. The FinCom would be meeting that week, with the expectation that they'd have it for Monday, but I mean, it is what it is. And I would need a couple of days, at least 3 days, to be able to turn the budget around to make sure that, the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, based on, doing changes at the last minute like that, which I don't have a problem with.
Would our timeline be that our meeting would have to be on Thursday? Could we have it earlier in the week?
Yeah, Kevin and I were talking about that. The reason that we were proposing the meeting and we were kind of banting around potential days for it is the amendment to the Masconomet regional school agreement to smooth out the peaks and the valleys of enrollment numbers, so that like this year we instead of being a 3% increase, it's going to be a 5.4 as it stands right now because our enrollment is going up. Yeah. So they had for several years been looking at trying to smooth that by having an average so that the towns don't have to anticipate these changes. So they would like input from each of the boards from the 3 towns before they get together, and they were getting together on February 4th. This is the policy subcommittee of the regional school committee to get our input. And so Kevin and I wanted a chance to kind of just talk with Shay and and consolidate this and make this very understandable so it doesn't take a really long meeting for us to discuss it and give the input. So we were trying to back that up. If we met with Che Monday or Tuesday and then got you the document to review, we were looking at Thursday. That was the original rationale for why a Thursday work session. But now considering the getting the document to FinCom, I don't know if we could potentially expedite it. But if you're saying, Catherine, it takes you 3 days to probably turn around the changes just to make sure everything's in sync, I'm not sure we could do it soon enough.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of math checks on the document, but I don't think that I don't think a week's going to make a difference in terms of the FinCom receiving it,
Okay.
because a lot of it is generated by what happens with the schools.
Okay, if that's not a problem, is that all right, Kevin?
Certainly, that's fine. I do want to introduce Donna Rich.
Why?
I saw her hiding in the background there.
This will be our team to talk about electricity over the next
Such
couple of
a
days.
nit. Well, okay, good. We'll talk about it.
That's good. You're good. We're gonna call it through.
I can leave now?
You're good.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice to see you, Donna. So yeah, if that sounds okay, then if everyone can go through the budget and identify anything that they might have a problem with or still questions outstanding, and we'll put that on the agenda for Thursday's work session if Thursday works for everyone.
Sorry, you can't.
Well,
4th of February, 4:00.
I think Kevin wanted to go a little bit earlier because the school committee meeting at night starts at 7. And he wanted to be able to, consolidate and articulate our thoughts to be able to share with them. So is 3:30, is that the time you were thinking, Kevin, on Thursday?
If that works for people. If it doesn't, we can do 4. And if it's, I did just hear this afternoon that they're considering postponing that meeting. I don't know if it's official yet, but under the circumstances, assuming it's still on,
Any of those hours are fine with me.
Me
3:30,
too.
4:30.
Me too.
Marshall, is 3:30 okay for you?
I mean, you guys have learned I'll do the meeting from anywhere.
Okay.
So yes.
He's
Are you
flexible.
just doing some light housekeeping while we talk?
I actually, my son, the youngest of them, uses this table, and I realized how sticky it's been this entire time I've been sitting here.
Okay, well, even if the school committee pushes off their meeting and they don't have it on the 4th, it looks like for our budget, it's worthwhile to meet on Thursday and we can address both issues.
So
So
Thursday we'll talk about any details. If you folks don't mind, if it's possible, giving me a heads up ahead of time of who
Sure.
or what items, that way I can make sure I have any last questions or prepare for it ahead of the meeting, or even have the department head there if it's specific around something that's important to them that we're going to take up. So maybe if they could generate, by early next week, maybe a list from each of you potentially, but just an email with bullets of the line item, I'll at least have a sense of and be prepared to give you what you need for the meeting, hopefully.
sure, is Monday end of day doable for everybody to identify the line items for Kevin?
Yeah. What form do you want that in, Kevin? Just a bullet on a particular budget line item that we got a problem with?
If you could send me even an email with just, Kevin, these are the items that I like to discuss. Bullet 1, police budget, this line, 54050.
Yeah.
Is in this and this amount. That would be really helpful. I'll make sure I have what.
I suppose in any note that might be helpful, like for instance, if Dick thinks it should go from 40 to 31, just to give you a sense, he's not asking for it to go back to 20, but just a general idea of what the concern is.
Yeah, and this is it's the over askings, and then if there's something really glaring in the operating, because we do meet guidelines. If there's something really glaring that we either missed or that there's a change that you don't agree with that's within there, that would let me know on that as well. But yeah, like I said, I know we all know this, but there'll be another multiple steps in this process to ensure that we balance this budget and avoid an override. Even if Masconomic comes in at the 5.4 at the end of the day, or the elementary schools are at 5.2, we'll work with them to try to get those numbers down.
Okay.
But the difference, though, we need to be a little careful. The difference between Masconomic, at this point, Masconomic's budget and the elementary school committee budget is that Masconomet is within their quote guideline that we and the other towns tend to want. The elementary schools are not within that guideline, so they would theoretically have more chance to come down. Trying to bring us down means that they have to cut their budget well below guidelines in order to adjust it for our student change in population.
That's
We just
correct.
have
And
to have our eyes wide open on the two things.
100%.
That we're looking at.
And it's not assuming anything, but like last year, because of the tough economy, I know there was a letter that Boxer sent over. I had conversation with Dr. Harvey. They were able to make some adjustments to get their budget down a little bit for to help us balance it. There's definitely a harder, to your point, they meet guidelines. It's definitely a harder sell, but certainly we're going to shake every tree and see if there's any, every dollar that might make us get to the finish line with a balanced budget.
And I think that, for instance, is, I think, Kevin, you and I discussed where the police cruiser might lay in there. Like if we have enough money for the police cruiser, or if not, then we go to the lease and we find a little more money that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kevin, was Dick's point that just, I don't know, do we have the money for the police cruiser in the operating budget or in capital? Where did it finally land?
So it's an over ask, 14,800 for the lease, something around that number, above the guidelines. We also have it in the capital. That was purposeful, the purpose. Yeah. So it is double dipped at the moment. By the time we get to the finish line, or even past, next Thursday, we will have it either living in both, so the FinCom can weigh it and we'll be able to know we have some relief one place or the other, or that's basically, okay. We'll know through the process. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So that probably wraps things up on the budget, the operating budget. We'll get you that input by Monday, Kevin, and we'll talk on Thursday. So while I was gone and you renamed the town, did you get started on the warrant articles at all?
We never did.
No. Okay. All right. So jumping to the warrant articles, the point I was making to nobody when my computer went down was that I think up on the on board docs is the list of articles that were like 2 meetings back. So they still have on there the 5 that we took off. So just understanding that we only have to talk about 9, or not even. Some of them we don't need any updates. But Kevin, if you want to just start on the ones that still had some questions outstanding and see if we have any updates for those.
I do. So I have a few different changes. Things have been moving really quickly in the last couple of days since we last met, trying to get more information and getting clarity. So number 12, the MS4, David Bond had reached out this afternoon or late morning and informed Debbie that he currently believes it's not an essential item for this year's warrant article. It does need to go through planning as well. His suggestion was to table it for this year and look to address it potentially next year. So that one can be eliminated as well as a warrant article. And then on the, I'm going to skip 13 and 14 and then go to 15 right now, which is a new item. You don't have 15.
I was going to say,
hey, what's 15?
Where is 15?
We're all paying attention. Yes. No, 15 is, I was talking with, to Madam Chair's point earlier around the Masconomet agreement. I had a further conversation this afternoon about where that stood, and if in fact it's something, it's early in the process, we haven't necessarily weighed in, don't necessarily have firm direction. That said, if it's something we want to move forward with, we will create a warrant article to do so. So I have a placeholder in the version I'm working off of right now, which is an ongoing living document. I haven't distributed because I was literally updating it all day long, and I wanted to make sure I gave you something that was good. But I'll send that back out to y'all, which has what that looks like. And then the Masconomet agreement, just very high level of what that article will be. It's looking at fiscal 23 as the first year to do a rolling average, taking the 2 prior fiscal years, so fiscal 20 and 19, averaging the student enrollment to give us what our number would be to use for our assessment. Then in your fiscal 24, it'd be taking the 3 prior years. So it'd be fiscal 23, 22, and 21, doing the same thing, doing it again in fiscal 25 for the 4 preceding years, and then fiscal 26 taking the 5 preceding years, and then going forward from there, it would go 5 years and a rolling average. Dr. Harvey's working on language for what the warrant article would look like. And then we're getting all that backup information to discuss next Thursday in detail. So for a placeholder purpose, I added this in here. There'll be more to come on that. I don't know if I'm going to have the version I distribute out, that first version, depending on the schools and when they get it over to me, may or may not have the language, but I'll certainly have a placeholder in there. So we all know that something's coming at some point if we agree that's something we want to do.
For my list, what am I going to call it?
You can call it Masco
Agreement. Masco
agreement. Masco agreement.
Agreement? That's fine.
Modification. Yeah, it's a modification of the existing agreement.
Masco agreement.
Got it. That's just for my own reference purposes anyway, so it doesn't matter.
No, it's what we're all going to talk about when we say it. That's what we're going to say. So we
well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Good job. Get a name.
Okay. Any of the others then, Kevin? Do you have an update on?
Yeah. So on the ambulance stabilization fund, we talked about at the last meeting being just that, a stabilization fund versus a enterprise fund.
Oh.
And there's not always enough time in the day, unfortunately. We haven't necessarily gotten around again, but for the purposes of tonight and today, I think, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, or Catherine, we feel comfortable with the stabilization fund being the option of choice. Is that confirmed?
Yeah. I had sent you a draft warrant article based on the information from Dick Hingston. So you could look at that at some point to talk about.
Thank you. What the general concept of that stabilization fund, enterprise fund, I am curious, does the board have any input based on how we've explained it to date on what we're looking at? Because obviously we want to do something that can be successful at this point in process and hopefully throughout the process. But I wouldn't want to go too far down the path with anything without getting any feedback at this point from you folks.
The one question that we had, and Catherine answered it, I couldn't answer it, but was how do you divide up the money? And she said, if you get a check for a payment, 25% would go into the stabilization fund and 75% would go to the general fund. So it would happen as it's received, because we weren't sure about that.
And Jen, was that the percentage amount? I know that 25% was the minimum that could be put in there. Is that the amount that you're looking for?
That's what I put in my draft for a talking point. I mean, we just don't know. So I figured we might as well go with the basic structure first. Okay.
In other words, as far as you're concerned, Jen, that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I had just put it, I think, in my draft for capital equipment and in the future purchase of an ambulance. That's all. I think if that's what so capital equipment would be things such as stretcher systems or cardiac monitors. It's, obviously more expensive equipment.
Catherine, do you have any, I know you've been working with us on this straight through the whole time. Any thoughts on your end?
No, nothing to add to it. It's really a management decision in terms of the type of fund that you're looking to set up.
This seems to be the cleanest, Catherine, and the easiest to do.
It wouldn't make a difference. Two different types of funds. The enterprise fund takes the ambulance out and describes it as being a business-like account, as opposed to the stabilization. It would be a specific purpose for ambulance capital. I think that there might be some questions in terms of it's a special purpose, but it's close in line with the capital stabilization fund that we currently have. So there might be some questions as to why we're looking to pull this differently. You just got to keep in mind that it does, change, at the end of the day, the look of the free cash a little bit. but it does solve the problem in terms of how to handle the expenditures, the capital expenses, such as the cost of an ambulance. It's going to be coming up shortly.
Any questions?
My sense is it's a lot cleaner and a lot easier to deal with as a stabilization fund than trying to do it with
The enterprise.
enterprise fund is almost impossible in that environment because of the mix, the things that you have mixed in and what happens.
Allocations.
Stabilization is a great solution.
I agree.
Okay. All right. Next one, Kevin.
Vaccine revolving fund. I've certainly spent a lot of time on vaccinations recently, but I think that this one, I still haven't seen from the health department a business plan that shows in perpetuity it's going to be a profitable enterprise. There is the possibility we want to keep this vaccination revolving fund ongoing beyond town meeting, and in which case we would need this fund to be on the books for it. So on my cheat sheet I have here, I've had highlighted in yellow, which is my slow down and still get some more information before we make a hard decision on it. If those, I know we've got good clarity on a number of these items. The enterprise fund, or I'm sorry, stabilization fund on the ambulance we just talked through, which was good. We've done some more homework. And the vaccination one in particular is one, it's such a moving target at the moment. And there's so much going on that I wouldn't feel confident saying here right now it's absolutely appropriate to put on, but at the same time, I wouldn't feel confident saying we should take it off. So I know that's not really a great answer to y'all, but at some point we'll have to make that final decision if that's on or off. And we could take that off, correct me if I'm wrong, really, we have a little bit of time if we decide to do that, which would allow us to get a little bit more information. So if we wanted to keep that on, if it's acceptable by the board, for now, I'll still draft the language for it, put it in the document, knowing that that might be one that we still have questions about. It might be pulled back from it at a week from now, call it, or what have you, if it makes sense to do so.
There's probably no downside in just having it be on the list if we're all in agreement that this is still an unknown.
Sure, it's on the list, and we know the status of it now. It's to be found. We need to get the data, whatever else. But at least we know what we're driving for. We got rid of a lot of unnecessary ones. Excellent.
We're getting there. That's the only one I've got a question mark next to. So we're getting there. Item 15, of course, is still a ghost, but.
And we had two others, Kevin, that we were going to get additional information on. The first one was the sign ordinance, having a discussion with Martha relative to the A-frames. Is that going to be included or not?
I spoke with Martha at a high level. She said, okay, yep, nope, that's good. Yep. Didn't really, I think we got it was flagged for her. There wasn't an opposition to it. I'd say that we certainly should pursue it until someone says not to. If the planning board officially takes it up and votes and says no, we're not going to change it, then it's not going to happen, right? So I think that based on my conversation, there's no reason to do anything other than continue down the path we're going down.
Okay.
How tight do we feel with the wording for the other part of the change, the one that initially drove this? That is to say, this campaign signs, political signs. How strong are we on, confident are we of what the text changes will be? Is it very simple? If it is, send out a sample. You don't have to send out the entire bylaw. Just send out that one paragraph that we're going to change, just to see it if it's really simple.
Is it just a change, or is it even just a strikeout? Is it just a removal of the part that talks about
the 60
days? If it is, that's great. If you have a sense, and it's not a finished one, but if you have a pretty good sense of what it is, and it's simple, please send it out to us so we can see it.
Yeah.
Who finalizes
don't
that?
go to KMP and check with them. Just tell us what you think it should be if it's simple.
Okay.
Who makes that change, Kevin, to put in as an article? Is that Martha and her board, or would you work with KP on that?
that's a combination of all three at the end of the day. Everybody gets a piece of it to make sure it's done right. But yeah, it would be basically Martha would say, yes, this is something we want to do. And then she would probably at that point maybe draft some language to what she would like it to look like, share it with KP, share it with myself, and then we'd move it that way.
She needs to get it fairly quickly though, because they need to schedule the hearings and things like that. And before they do anything about the hearing, they have to have the wording so that they can put it in for the hearing and schedule the hearing and then have the hearing and all that before the town meeting. So now is the time that it needs to move forward. So if you have that language, that would be helpful.
And then I think the last one that had questions was number 4. Greg was going to document exactly what it was that he was proposing to put into the article.
How much of all? Yeah.
Yeah, so he redlined it, sent it over today for me. I can certainly distribute that to you folks if you'd like to review it. We did make from a management perspective that the modification, sort of that middle ground change, it would be biting off too much. We really have to have a public conversation around some of those changes than to just kind of put that one through. We felt, and it felt rushed at this point to try to come up with. We don't even have a strategy on how that would be worded or what it would look like at this point in time. So it's something where it's certainly something where we both agreed we'd start discussing for possibly next town meeting. But for right now, getting that water restriction edits completed was the priority. So I have the draft. I got it this morning. I'll forward that to you all.
Okay, great. Thank you. So it looks like unless I missed anything, we've covered all outstanding items relative to these. Did anyone have any remaining questions before we decide what's up and down? Because it looks like on my list, it's just 12 coming out so far. And that was at Kevin's direction. But any other questions on?
Yes. Okay. If there's no other questions about this, though, could I ask for a discussion, an update from Jen on this vaccines? Because I think you said this during your discussion or something at some point. What is our plan to get to shut-in, so to speak, to get them the vaccines? How does that work?
I am so glad that you just asked me that. I just got off the phone with a son of a woman who's 95 years old, and she's declining. Thank you very much. We have been working really closely with Wendy and with Kathleen in her baptism by fire on her first week in the Council on Aging. So we obviously have a very good knowledge of people who are unable to leave their homes. So we have been reaching out to them individually for the vaccine, and they're going to be getting their vaccines tomorrow afternoon. For the people that are not able to leave their homes, a lot of them don't receive Council on Aging services because they're actually too young. There's a group of people.
Okay. Yep.
Tomorrow, Wendy will receive word on how many more vaccines we're able to get for the next week. It's, as you see in the news, it's really limited. And so we have a plan for the senior housing, all of them around. Wendy's been working on that. And the Council on Aging has been able to dedicate us a phone line. These are actually, while you guys have been talking, that's what I've been doing. We were able to get a phone line dedicated so that we'll be able to, that's that son again calling, damn it. But so that we'll be able to direct people to that phone line to get help to register. So we've been really very actively taking a lot of time in the last couple of days to work with people, because I know people are really frustrated with trying to get through the mega site and things like that. So the shut-in, the people who aren't able to leave their homes, we are intending to get tomorrow. Many of them have declined, but they're grateful for being offered.
Okay. So
I am one of those old people that are very frustrated trying to get through the mega site.
I bet. Wendy's got some plans. We're going to talk about, we have, what did you call it? COVID crew. We're going to talk about that again tomorrow. And, but Wendy has some plans for distribution of, it's really about, It's about supply. It's about getting it. It's super frustrating the way that she has to request it, and whether she can request whatever she wants, but what she gets is not necessarily what she requested. So like I said, a lot, I think Kevin keeps saying this too, a lot of the boards of health have declined to do this altogether and have just passed people off to the mega site. And we didn't do that. Wendy was really great. And because she's the one that has the contact, and she's really been behind the effort to let us vaccinate our people. So
Can I speak on this again?
One of the
We keep hearing good things about Wendy, for sure.
Yep.
Boyd, you're not eligible tomorrow because you told us you got your shot and now you're ambulatory. You're able to get out, so.
And Jen, by the way, if it's this sun over here, the lights are on and it all looks fine over there. So he's
Oh yeah, I know.
not having any problems.
Oh, good.
If I could just get back for a moment to the articles, just to wrap those up.
No, but we didn't finish the vaccines. If I could just finish, because this is the important piece of it.
Does this have to do with the articles?
No, it's not with the article.
No, it doesn't, Dick. Hang on one second.
But we need to know what it is.
Yes. Hang on one second, though. So to get a sense of the board instead of a final vote, because some of these may come on or off depending on some additional information that we have. But sense of the board, the only one as of today that is coming off is item 12. Is that correct?
That's what I've got.
Everything else is still on.
So, Madam Chair, is it okay if I just maybe read the numbers off just for confirmation?
Certainly.
Number 1, in. Number 3, in. Number 4, in. Number 5, in. Number 8, in. Number 10, in. Number 13, in. 14, in. And 15 as an add as of today, in.
That's my understanding.
Right.
Thank you.
And the issue is not necessarily in, but rather not out.
Yes, because
but that's fine.
Right.
That's right.
In for now.
Yes, it's in for now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Dick, did you have more questions about the vaccine?
Can I go back to the vaccine?
Yes.
The point that I would make is this, that the shut-ins within Topsfield are the ones that are the greatest challenge to us. They cannot go to any site, mega site, doctor site, whatever. There's shut-ins. Maybe they can get an ambulance to take them to the doctor or something, but they need to be serviced at home is the way I would understand it. And Jen can straighten me out if I'm wrong. I'd like to understand two things is how many people are there in that category and how and when will they be serviced? And I hear things like if you want vaccines, you can only get a minimum of 100 or something like that. How does this all work out? And if the answer is it's all worked out, don't worry about it, Dick, I'll take that as an answer, except just tell me how many people then.
Right now, I came up, myself and my staff with working with the Council on Aging, we came up with about 15 people. Like I said, a large percentage of them are not, they're not in the senior category, but they're in the homebound category. And so they will all be serviced tomorrow.
Excellent.
By my staff. And that was not my son that was calling. Sorry, that was an older woman's homebound, the son calling. But so they're taken care of.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
But those are really the most critical ones that really need help from the town. They don't have a choice. They have to get it from somebody, and we're the right ones to do it. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
It's a done deal.
It's going to be done.
It's a done deal. Let's move on.
Is there anything else before we move into executive session, Kevin, that you wanted to cover?
Covered a lot so far. Thank you.
No, we're good. Okay.
I have a comment about the things that we're going to talk about in terms of the other line items of the budget. One thing that has not been resolved is what we're going to do with the building department salaries. I mean, we've gotten a spreadsheet that shows all of the options, and we got to decide how we're going to allocate those hours and what it's going to cost. So we need to take a good look at that.
So certainly, and I think last year, if I remember correctly, the initial budget that we actually went to version 2 with actually included a little flexibility, knowing we were going to get work through. The final step of the budget was actually to eliminate. I had a conversation with Glenn. I'm like, Glenn, are you going to stick around for the next year? And he said yes. So then we reduced basically the what he had put in that year as an overage to cover in case he was to leave early. This year, it's the opposite. We now know we have a definition of he's added in there, so it's a matter of we have a little more clarity, I think, this year. But it's certainly still open to it's an over ask on how many hours, and what's the right number for sure.
That's right.
Hey, could I have a motion to enter executive session, please?
Motion to enter the board to enter closed executive session in accordance with MGL 30A, Section 21A, under exemption 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. The board will not return to regular open session, and the subjects of discussion will be AFSCME and Police Reserve Association collective bargaining agreements.
I have a second.
Do you declare so?
I so declare. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Hook?
Aye.
Mr. Gant?
Aye.
And Ms. Bermudez is aye, so it's unanimous. We are now in executive session.